All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, either post them below the video here. If you're on a mobile device, it's going to be typically below the video. If you are on a normal like laptop, desktop computer, something like that, it's going to be probably to the right of the video is where that'll be. Post your questions on there. If you're new to the office hours, I start answering questions that were posted up to an hour before. So if you posted questions more than an hour ago, just repost your questions. So Hans V, Matthew, E, Alyssa L. So all these questions came yesterday afternoon when office hours was already over. So if you got your questions, if you're one of those people, you want to get your questions answered, just copy and paste it up there, and we will get to that during the office hours. So first thing I wanted to talk about was a question I got from a student that asked me, what is the number one place where power comes from? Where does power come from mostly in the golf swing? And I thought that was a good question. I thought I would share with you guys. And basically, the number one source of power in the golf swing is essentially your range of motion. So we can talk about kind of break that down into how do we get that range of motion. So when I'm talking about range of motion, I'm talking about how much space and time you can create for the club head to accelerate it. Because the more space and time you have to accelerate the club head, the more club head speed you can generate. So if you imagine if I have this club, right, and I only bring it to here versus bringing it to here, which swing am I gonna be able to produce the most amount of power? Even if I swung to right here and swung as hard as I possibly could, but then I came to right here and swung as hard as I possibly could, which one's gonna produce the most amount of power? And I think it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to see that it's going to be that top, getting the club, creating more space, right? So how do we do that? Where does that all come from? So part of it comes from our pelvis, right? We need to rotate our pelvis. If you look at your average tour player, they're typically rotating their pelvis about 50 degrees. So one thing that I often see in students is that they don't rotate their pelvis very much, or what they'll do is they'll feel like they're rotating their pelvis, but what they're really doing is they're just sliding their hips. And that's going to be a big time distance killer, not only for increasing your range of motion, getting a bigger shoulder turn, but also for your weight shift in sequencing in the downswing, which is also important for creating speed. So it kind of creates this snowball effect that's going to make it really difficult to create lots of speed. So we want to make sure that we are turning our pelvis going back, feeling like we're keeping. We can have a little bit of a move off of the golf ball. That's completely fine. But as we go up to the top of the swing, we want to be pushing that pelvis back. So we want to feel like our femur here, which is our thigh bone, is angled in toward our body. If we get that femur where it's more vertical or even pointing outside of our body, that's going to be a distance killer right there. It's going to be a very big power killer. So we want to make sure that we're kind of rotating our hips back. And for some people, if you're used to sliding the hips in loading up in that fashion, it's going to be a different sensation because your tailbone, it's going to almost feel like you're sliding toward the target. But the reality is you're just rotating your hips. Your tailbone's moving toward the target when you do this. But when you slide, your tailbone's moving away from the target. So it could be a little different sensation, but definitely something I would look at your swing on video, see if you're getting this hip slide going on, because that can be a big reason why you don't have the amount of power that you want. Now, for some people, turning the pelvis can be a difficult thing because of limitations in our hips and our flexibility. So I fall into that category. I can only internally rotate my foot about 20 degrees max, like 15, 20 degrees. So when I'm talking about that, if I angle this down, what I'm saying is that when you're rotating your hips back like this, your foot here, your leg is turning like that. So you can see I'm going to try and turn my foot in as much as I possibly can. I can only do maybe about 20 degrees if I'm lucky, right? So I can go external rotation all day. You can see I can externally rotate my leg a ton, but that doesn't help me a lot when I'm trying to turn my hips in this direction. So it's just the way that I'm built. It's the way that a lot of people are built. So there's an easy fix for that, a very, very easy fix for that. When I set up to the golf ball, I always set up with my feet flared out. And that allows me to internally rotate on my trail leg as much as possible. Now, when you do that, you need to free up your lead leg, your lead foot as well, because we can't keep that planted on the ground. Because if you kept that planted on the ground, then it's going to be very, very difficult for you to continue to rotate. So go ahead and let that heel come off the ground. Go ahead and let this knee kind of kick in behind the golf ball. That's completely fine to do. Look at some of the greatest golfers ever: Sam Snead, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer. Like, these guys are all kicking that leg in, or kicking that knee in and lifting that heel off the ground. It's a great source of power to free up the hips. So that's one place where it comes from. Another place where we can get this range of motion from is what's in our upper spine. So it's our thoracic spine. That's where most of that rotation comes from. So that's the separation of our pelvis and our rib cage, essentially. That's all coming mostly from your upper spine, your thoracic spine there. Now, some of us, as we get older, it gets a little bit tight, right? We can get a little bit tight when we're doing that, but there's things that we can do to improve that. So there's a stretch. It's called, I believe it's called a page turner. It's basically, you just kind of lay on your back. You have your hips one way, and you just kind of open up your body like this. We actually have this stretch on the website if you want to go check it out. If you're having trouble with limitations with this, it could be that you may need to go to a chiropractor and get an alignment, and that may open you up to where you can move a little bit better if you're having trouble with that. But hey, most people, your average person is going to be able to get about 45 degrees of separation there, right? If you have good flexibility, if you have normal flexibility, I would say, I shouldn't say good, normal flexibility would be about a 45-degree separation of your rib cage to your shoulder. So the way you could test that would be if you just sit down in a chair, keep your hips or keep your knees together. Don't let your knees go apart. Put a club on your shoulders like this, and then just rotate and see how much rotation you're getting. If you're getting 45 degrees, then you're probably in that normal range. If you're only able to rotate, if you sit on your backside here and you keep your knees locked together and you only can rotate about like that, there may be a limitation there, and you may want to look at doing that stretch a little bit that I talked about. So we want to find that stretch. It's on the website. It's in the fitness course. All you got to do is click the house icon at the top of the page. That will take you to the home page where we list all the courses. Scroll down, go to the fitness page, or go to the fitness course with Joe Yoon. It's going to be that very, very first drill in there. I think it talks about improving your distance while drinking a beer or something like that. So that it's going to be the first video in there where we talk about opening that up a little bit. But that's another place where that power comes from, right? The other place is where we go lifting of the arms, right? So to create more space, we need to get the arms lifting up in the air. If we're coming back in the backswing, maybe we rotate our pelvis, we rotate our thorax very, very well, but we don't really lift up the club. Well, I'm not creating a lot of space here. I'm not lifting up the club very much. I need to lift this club up, get this club lifting up in the backswing, and that's going to allow me to create more space. Now, there is a place where maybe it's too much. If you go kind of like that, maybe that's a little bit too much, and it's harder to get the club on plane. But I'd like to see where you get your hands basically directly above your trail shoulder. I think that's like a really good spot right there, because it's going to be a great place where you can get some really good power because you've created a lot of space, but it's also a place where you can more easily get that club to come on plane. You don't have to shallow the club out very much to get that club on plane. It's going to be a lot easier to do that. So right above, that's where you're going to see a lot of the tour players, is right in there, right above that trail shoulder. Tiger Woods, Roy McIlroy, Adam Scott. That's where we see a lot of these players at. And those are all players that have a lot of power right there. So definitely be working on getting those hands up going high. Another place, and this is kind of a smaller place, and most people do this kind of naturally, is from the protraction and retraction of the shoulders. So when I'm talking about protraction, I'm talking about my shoulder blade moving away from my spine. So this would be protraction. When I'm talking about retraction, I'm talking about my shoulder blade going toward the spine, excuse me. So if I have my chest going this way, right, if I protract my lead shoulder and retract my trail shoulder, you can see that I've got about 20 degrees here. You can get about 10 degrees of extra turn from that. So as you're going up the top, you're going to see how you're going to see some protraction here in my lead shoulder, and then some retraction there in my trail shoulder. Some people are going to have immobile shoulders and may not be able to do that, but typically that's something that you're going to do fairly naturally. So that's really where power turn, or where power comes from. And if you want to work on this, the biggest thing that you can do, the best thing you can do, is work through the power turn course in the Top Speed Golf system. Work through level 1, work through level 2, work through level 3. Really fully ingrain all of these pieces, so that way it's automatic. You don't even have to think about it. You just go out there and you're getting a great turn. So in that course, you're going to be working on rotating your hips. You're going to be working on rotating your shoulders. You know, that's where it's protraction and retraction, getting the hands up high. So work on those pieces in the power turn course, and that's going to be the easiest way for you to get distance and work through that. So also you can work through our 20-minute distance fix course, which is a 3-week course that includes a lot of those things that we just talked about as well. But if you want to fully ingrain it, you know, that 20-minute distance fix, that's a 3-week program to kind of see what pieces are going to give you the most distance, and hopefully you gain some great distance along the way. But to really fully ingrain that and to make it second nature to where you don't have to think about it, it's automatic, you'll want to work through our power turn course, because that's where you're going to get the reps in, so that you don't even have to think about it. All right, so let's go see here who we're going to start with. So Dennis G says, I noticed on video that I'm practicing the straight line release that my left wrist is cupped and facing behind me at 45 degrees, 45-degree release. Should the right wrist be flat and facing more to the ground? I don't know about the left forearm rotation through impact, but I'm wondering if I should be. So Dennis, basically the straight line release isn't always going to occur at 45 degrees out in front. It is if you're doing it correctly. So it sounds like you may not be doing it correctly. If you're kind of coming in and your club is 45 degrees out in front and it's kind of in this position right here, well, that's not the correct release. The straight line release, when the straight line release occurs, is when the club is splitting your forearms. It's typically, hopefully, going to be after impact. You know, if it's happening before impact, that you're flipping big time. But if it's happening after impact, we want that to be where the club is splitting the forearm. So I'm going to choke up on this club so you can easily see when this club is splitting my forearm. So as I'm coming down, you can see the club is not splitting my forearms yet. The butt end of the club is pointing outside my left arm. As I come into contact, as I'm coming closer to contact here, you can continue to see club is outside my left arm. As I come into contact, that club's going to be pretty close to in line with my lead arm. Might be just a hair outside of it for your best ball strikers. And then after contact, you can see it's starting to get inside my lead arm. It's still not completely splitting my forearms yet. And then as I get right here, 45 degrees out in front, you can see that club is now splitting my forearms there. It's right there in the middle. That's where you're going to see your best players at typically, is you're going to see about right here, about 45 degrees out in front. And if you look at my left wrist is basically, it's pretty flat. It may be just a hair cupped. Just a hair, because you're splitting the difference between both wrists, right? But they're mostly going to be what's called ulnar deviation, where thumb's out away from me with a little bit of slight extension, right? In both wrists there, just very, very slight extension, split in between there. And if you're coming through and you have your arms a little bit more apart, right, which we'll see in some players. So if we look at Brooks Koepka, we look at Jordan Spieth, Lee Westwood, Angel Cabrera, Jamie Sadlowski. These are all players that actually have their elbows kind of a little bit apart as they come through contact. You know, that's what we call a good chicken wing. The bad chicken wing is where we flip and don't rotate, and the hands kind of and the arms kind of race out in front of the body like that. The good chicken wing is where we're getting rotation and we're squaring up the face, lots of forward shaft lean here. This is what Brooks Koepka essentially looks like in his straight line release. It looks more like this, right? If you look at a Rory McIlroy, Tiger Woods, it's going to be more like this with the arms more extended and the elbows closer together. So that's either one of those is completely fine. So you may have a little bit of a different angle in your wrist when you do that, but for the most part, it's going to be thumbs down pretty much all the way, very, very slight extension in the wrist. So you shouldn't see, if your wrist is like, I don't know how you could be in a straight line release position if your wrist is very, very cupped like this, because it would be very, very hard to have the club split the forearms in that position. So I'm guessing you're maybe just a little bit confused about what exactly the straight line release is. The straight line release is when the club is splitting the forearm. So just like that. This right here wouldn't be a straight line release. The club is already released at this point, right? The club is already released a while before. So if you're looking 45 degrees out in front and you're seeing it looks like that, that's not the straight line release. Your straight line release is probably more like right in this area, right? Which means that you're releasing the club a little bit early. So you may want to continue to work on the straight line release course. Let me know if I'm off there, Dennis, but that's kind of what I gathered from your question there. All right, so Steve H says, can you explain and show the correct hip turn on the backswing? I think my hip turn is too flat and needs to be more tilted. So quick question, we already talked about this a little bit, but basically you're going to have a little bit of tilt here at address, right? So here's straight up and down, right? If you look at kind of my belt line here, as I get into my posture, you can see that I'm going to go, my hips are going to tilt a little bit. And as you go up to the top of the swing, they're going to kind of remain in that tilt. The main thing here is when we're looking from face on, if you were to use like an app like V1 Golf or something like that, and you put an angle on your hip here, you put a line here on your hip. Ideally, as we go up to the top of the swing, we would see that you're still inside that line at the top. Now, you're going to see some tour players move off of the ball just a little bit in the beginning, but then as they get up to the top of the swing, they end up being inside that line. So Brooks Koepka, if you look at his swing, if you draw a line on the outside of his hip, you can see as his trigger to kind of start the swing, he kind of moves off of the ball just a tiny bit. So his hips kind of slide just a hair, but that's just to get momentum moving to his lead side. And as he gets up to the top of the swing, then he's pushing that hip back. And if that line that you drew initially, he went into it very, very slightly at the start and then backed away from it as he got up to the top of the swing. Now, we don't want to be too far off of it. We don't want to be like that. That's going to be a difficult position. Basically, we want to be pretty much right on it and then starting to move off of that line, getting that momentum going to our lead side as we go up to the top. So if what you may be doing is not rotating your hips, right? So what you may be doing is what's called a sway. So if you're tilting your hips like this and your femur is getting more vertical, your femur being the bone in your thigh here, if that's getting more vertical, that's going to lead to some issues. Not only that, your spine angle is probably going to get off. You're going to have a hard time sequencing correctly in the downswing. So feel like that femur is staying angled in toward your body so that you can be in a great position here at the top. So now look at my spine angle is really good. I've turned my pelvis a ton here. Now I can more easily get to my lead side and start that downswing correctly. So there's a great drill. If you're seeing that you're sliding with your hips, almost always the best thing that you can do whenever you're trying to change something is to exaggerate the opposite. So what would be the opposite of a slide, right? And slide and no rotation. That would be actually turning the hips a lot and pushing them that way. So the fault here, we're going to talk about fault, your feel, and then what your real, well, hopefully your real is going to be. The fault is that we're sliding and not rotating, right? The feel is that we're going to rotate and then push our hips back. So I want to feel like, you can see I've rotated my hips probably 70 degrees here, 60 degrees, and I'm pointing my tailbone toward the target here, and I've actually pushed my hip away. So I'm kind of in this position. This would be overdoing it. This is just the feel, though, of what we're trying to do. So here's the feel, and now here's the real. The real is hopefully that we're going up to the top, and we're in this kind of position right here. This is where you're going to see most tour players. You're going to see nice, stable, angled away position with the spine. You're going to see the femur angled in, great hip turn. So that's what I'd recommend doing to work on that. So do some really slow motion practice swings. And like I said earlier, if you're having trouble with that internal rotation, maybe you have a limitation like I do, and you have to angle that foot out. Don't be afraid. You know, I know it doesn't maybe look as good. You know, it doesn't look like Rory McIlroy where he's got both of his feet squared off. But Rory McIlroy has incredible internal rotation. His foot doesn't even turn out when he comes through into the full follow through. So he's got incredible flexibility in his hips here to be able to do that. So not everyone's like that. Most people aren't going to be flexible like he is in his hips. So angle those feet out so that you can. Most people don't have the internal rotation like that. So angle those feet out so that you can more easily rotate. It's completely fine to do that. And I know you might be thinking, well, what about the external rotation? Well, in the backswing, right, my trail leg is externally rotating, but what I'm going to do with that leg is I'm going to let my heel come off the ground, let my knee kick in a little bit. And in the downswing, my leg, I'm coming around, my leg's coming around, and I'm getting up on my toes as I'm coming through. So that's completely fine. That's what you want to do. So don't be afraid to angle those feet out. I know it may seem kind of uncomfortable at first, but I'm telling you, it will help free you up and make it a lot easier to make that hip turn. All right, so Steve G says, hi, Q, just started hitting again, and now everything is going off to the right. Can't seem to finish my swing. I have a tee time on Saturday and don't want to lose 100 balls. Any quick fix other than hitting left and hoping it ends up straight? So that's what, well, if you're looking for a quick fix, what I would either do is play it to go right, so aim left and just play. If you're consistently doing that, just play it to go right. You know, basically that's like the slicer that always aims left and then hits it right and down the middle, right? So that's completely fine to do. That's basically what the quick fix is. If you're looking for something to kind of get your swing back and get back on track, what I'd recommend doing is called a slow motion golf swing. So what I would actually do is I would go out with your driver, and I would actually literally try to hit your driver 100 yards. And when you do that, when you go really slow like that, it helps you feel what's going on. So if you're hitting the ball right, there could be some things going on there. I don't know if it's a slice or if it's a block out to the right. But if it's a slice, it likely means that you're cutting across the ball with an open face if it's curving like that, right? So when you do the slow motion swing, you know, when you go fast, it takes away feel. So you can't really feel a lot of these things that are going on sometimes. But when you go slower, when you start down, you'll feel that like, oh, well, I'm going over the top. I can clearly feel that I'm going over the top. And then on the next one, do another slow motion swing where you feel like, I would try to feel like you're getting that hook, like you're trying to hook the ball. And then once you hook one, then I would do another slow motion swing where you just ease off of that and you just get it to go dead straight. Now, if it's a block, like a push out to the right, where your face is open and you're actually kind of swinging in that direction, again, that's something that you'll feel in your swing when you're going really slow. And again, this is not easy to do. It's a difficult thing to do, but when you go really slow and try to hit basically to hit a driver 100 yards, it's going to be about 50 miles per hour, I think, at club head speed to hit a driver 100 yards. I think I tried to calculate it one time. It's only going to carry about 60, 70 yards, depending on how much loft you have, but it'll roll out close to 100 yards if you swing about 50 miles per hour. So if you swing 100 miles per hour, that's literally half of the swing speed. So you're going to feel, oh my gosh, I'm swinging really into out. That's why I'm blocking it out to the right. And then you'll, okay, well, on this one, I'm going to feel like I'm swinging more over the top with a closed face and try to hit some pulls. You know, try to hit some balls that really, really start to the left. And then once you get that, now let's do a really slow swing and get that to where it's dead center, right where we want it. So once I've been able to do that with my 100-yard swing, now let's bump it up to 50 yards. Let's bump up the speed a little bit and try to get that perfectly square shot, and pay attention to what's going on. You'll be able to feel on the club face if you're hitting it off the toe or off the heel. You'll feel that club twist in your hand. You'll be able to see your ball flight if the ball's slicing or if it's pushing off to the right, starting left, starting right, and make your adjustments. When you go really slow, you can make those adjustments and then build up the speed. And then I would just build up to your normal speed. So just to summarize again, I would start out, I would try to hit your driver 100 yards, see what's happening, right? And maybe when you slow everything down and you try to hit your driver 100 yards, you hit it dead straight. Well, that's great. Well, then bump that up, do that at 150 yards, and then bump that up and do it at 200 yards, and then keep bumping that up 50 yards until you get to where your normal club head speed is. So if you're a 100-mile-per-hour swinger, which is around what your average golfer is, 95 to 100, that's going to be about a 250-yard drive. So work on getting that, just inching that up little by little by little, and going slow like that helps you feel what's going on, and you can make the corrections that way. All right, so David H says, high hands versus deep hands. I'm aware of the importance of place on high hands to gain club head speed. The further your hands travel, the more time is generated. My question is, wouldn't deep hand path produce the same effect? Not the same effect, no. You got to have a certain amount of verticals in the swing and horizontals in the swing. So when you're talking deep hands, that's if I just let's go to the extreme with it. Okay, so if I just rotated and got my hands really, really deep, what do you think is going to be faster, this or this? Right, this is going to be a lot faster, right? So you got to have a good combination. Now, a lot of times when people get too much vertical, right, they don't turn their body very much, right? So they'll get here, but they'll look like this in the front. So we have to have a certain amount of both. Like I said, a really good place to be is to have your hands, a really good mixture of having a vertical swing versus a horizontal swing is to get your hands up above your trail shoulder. So right here at the top of the swing. So if I'm in this kind of position there, you can see I've got a great shoulder turn, and you can see I've got my hands up nice and high up over my head. That's going to push you in a really good, powerful position to make it easier. That doesn't mean that you may not swing better with a little bit more horizontal, or it doesn't mean you may not swing better with a little bit more vertical. So if you think about, there's two great players right here. We got Bubba Watson, who's a very vertical swinger, but he also gets a huge shoulder turn. He swings very vertically, but he's also has all the other elements, right? So he's really turning his hips, he's really turning his shoulders, and he's got his hands up high. It's not a coincidence that Bubba Watson's been one of the longest hitters on the tour for the last 12, 13, 14 years. I don't even know how long his career has been, but it's been around that area. He's been one of the longest hitters out there, pretty much top 5 every year in distance. I think this past year was the first year of his career that he wasn't top 5. I think he was number 6 or something like that this past season, 2019. So, but he's getting old. He's not a young guy on the tour anymore. So that's still pretty darn good. Dustin Johnson, same kind of thing, right? Very, very similar length of career. Again, those two guys, top 5 pretty much every single year in driving distance. So that's from getting their hands up high, having those verticals in there. But they also have those horizontal elements in there, the deep, getting the hands deep as well. So you talk about a Matt Kuchar, right? Matt Kuchar, not a real long hitter, but very, 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 very consistent and accurate. So you just have to find that happy medium that works the best for you. But if you're getting the hands very, very vertical, what you have to make sure you do is that you also turn, because that's one of the biggest issues I see with people who really try to get their hands up high, is they'll just try to do this, right? They'll go up. They'll just go up like this. They'll just lift their arms up. We need to make sure that we're turning our shoulders and we're getting those hands up high. That's going to allow you. So when you work through the 20-minute distance fix, that's why we do the shoulder turn first, the catapult drill, is because the skyscraper drill is one of the last ones. So we want to make sure that you have all those other elements in your swing first before you add in trying to get a little bit more vertical. So deep hands are really good. We want to make sure that we're getting that rotation, but we also want to make sure that we get high hands. This right here is not going to be faster than this, right? So at least I've never seen where it is. It's just not enough space to accelerate the club. So, all right. So Bud N says, having success with 20-minute distance fix, tips on how to blend improved club head speed into money or competitive rounds. So basically when you are working through the 20-minute distance fix and you're gaining club head speed, you're swinging with 100% effort. This isn't your playing speed swing. This is your 100% effort swing. So just to tell you, I actually just recently, the other day, got my new personal best high club head speed. I got up to 129. My playing speed right now is somewhere in the neighborhood of 119 to 121, right? So that's the swing that I'm out on the course, and that's how fast I'm swinging out on the course when I'm playing competitively or for money or whatever, which I don't really do. But when I'm out there on the course playing, so you're just implementing the same things in your swing. It's just it's a toned down version. It's not 100% effort kind of swing when you're out there playing competitively or playing for a score. But as your 100% effort swing goes up, your playing speed is also going to go up automatically on its own. So I've gone through the 20-minute distance fix. As we were building the program, I did the training, a year or so ago, and I started out 108, 110 was kind of my average, right? Took 10 swings. They were all 108 to 110. Then I went through the training. I swung as hard as I could and did the catapult, did the high hands, did the lag, did all that stuff. I got to where my 100% effort swing was 123 miles per hour after the 3 or 4 weeks. Okay. So I actually did an experiment where I tried to swing slower, right? I tried to swing slower. My playing speed at that time, I was like 116, 117, 118 at tops for my playing speed, but my 100% effort swing was 123 miles per hour. So I tried to swing slower. I intentionally tried to swing 108, 110. When I tried to do that, I swung 112 miles per hour when I tried to swing really slow. So that's that neural adaptation. I was swinging 117, 118 miles per hour. I tried to swing slow. It was 112 miles per hour, and that's still 2 to 4 miles per hour faster than what I felt like before was an aggressive swing, right? So that's what happens after you do the training. As you're just like, my 100% effort swing has gone up to 129. My playing speed right now is like 120, 121, somewhere in that area. And that feels like the same kind of swing, the kind of effort that I'm putting into it. It feels the same as when I was swinging 108, 110. But obviously it's not, right? Obviously it's much higher. So keep working through the drills, and the more you do them, the more that that speed's going to become second nature to you. So just know what your playing speed is, and know that as that 100% effort swing goes up, that playing speed is going to go up. It's going to feel like it's slow maybe, but it's going to feel like you're in control of it, but it's still going to be much faster than what you're doing before, which is going to help you to hit the ball much further. All right. So Gino S says, hi Q, I'm having an issue with the early release. Seems like I'm releasing at the ball since my focus is there. Is there a drill to work on lag release? Yes. So that's going to be your straight line release course, and that's going to be the move course, working on those pieces. So I would first make sure that your other pieces are in order first, right? So really, really important to make sure that your spine angles are good. Right, because if your spine angles are off, it's going to make it really difficult to release that club out in front. So this is the first piece of the tough speed golf system. We want to make sure that we're nice and angled away at address. We want to make sure that we're nice and stable at the top of the swing. And then we want to make sure that we're more angled away and opening up as we're coming into contact. That's with our spine angles. If we're going like this at the top, we're swaying our hips, or we're getting too far angled away, and then we're coming into contact, and we're coming into contact, we're very vertical with our spine, or we're like this when we're coming into contact, it's just going to be hard to release that club properly. So the stable fluid spine is really the foundation for the golf swing. So you got to make sure that you're in good order there first. Work through those, get those ingrained. And that's not only going to help you to release the club better, that's going to help everything else. That's going to help you get the club more on plane. It's going to help with your consistency. It's going to help you hit the ball more in the center of the face, square it up a lot better. There's lots of benefits there. So key number one, make sure that stable fluid spine is in good shape. You also want to make sure your power turn is good. If you're not turning your shoulders very much, you're going to rush that downswing. It's going to be hard to get that club to release properly. It's going to be hard to sequence properly when you're rushing things. So make sure that you're getting that good shoulder turn so that you have plenty of time to sequence the club properly in the downswing. When we talk about lag is the next piece. So that's the second piece was power turn. The next piece is lag. If we are casting the club from the very beginning, you basically have no chance of releasing that club out in front because you're already releasing it from here. What you see with the best players out there is you're going to see that they don't really start releasing that lag until about when this lead arm is parallel to the ground. So they're either going to be sharpening this angle, is what you're going to see in most players. So they're going to be sharpening this angle, or they're maintaining this angle as they're coming down. So if you look at Dustin Johnson, right, JB Holmes, they aren't generating a ton of lag in the downswing. They aren't sharpening this angle, but they're also not casting, right? So if you see from the very top of the swing, you're going like that. That's a death move to release the club properly. So you got to make sure that you're doing that. So you may need to work through the lag course to work your way up to there. So basically what I'm saying here is that there's prerequisites for these courses. You want to make sure that you're, it's like in college, right? When you had to take, English 100 before you could take English 200, right? It's kind of the same thing going on here. We need to make sure our stable fluid spine is good. We need to make sure our power turn is good, make sure that we're not casting the club. And then our compression line is next. We need to make sure that is good. If we are bumping to release this club out in front, we need rotation. We need our body to rotate into contact. If our compression line is bad and we're bumping our hips out, I cannot rotate from this position. If you do, man, it's going to be tough on your back to do that. So we need to make sure that this hip is moving back and out of the way as we're coming in. That's what you work on in the compression line course. So again, another prerequisite for getting that release correct. And then once you get all those four pieces, those prerequisites done, now let's look at our straight line release. If we're doing all those pieces, we're rotating, everything looks good, but then we're coming into contact and we're doing this, then we may need to work on that straight line release and work on how the hands are moving into contact and how our body is also moving a little bit better into contact to get that release better. So you may want to work on the straight line release. There could also be some other factors in there, which is why I say the move, because maybe you just don't know how to square that face properly yet. You've always been used to squaring the face by flipping with that wrist. So working on the move is going to get you to where you're squaring that face earlier in the swing, which is going to make it so that you can continue to rotate into contact instead of having to save it with the flip at the end to square it up. It's also going to get you to where you're shallowing out this club, right? So, the stable fluid spine, all these pieces help you to get that club in the right position, but you can still come down steep, have all those pieces great. You can have your spine in the perfect position, but you can still have this club coming down like that if that's just what's more comfortable for you to do. So you may need to work on getting this club to be in a more shallow position coming down, so that way you can stay in your posture and rotate through contact. Because if this club is steep in transition, so I'm coming down, this club is steep, it's kind of too vertical here. Well, what I need to do is I need to get this club back on plane to hit a good shot. So what I'm going to typically do, what most players do, or better players that flip the club, is that they're going to stand up to get that club back on plane. Because when you stand up, that lifts the handle, that drops the head. Now I'm on plane, but the problem is I'm standing up and I have to flip the club to get to the golf ball when that happens. So that's going to be a big part of staying in your posture, is getting that club to shallow out. The other option is what we would see poor players do who are coming down steep, is that they'll just come over the top. They'll just continue and just kind of come down steep into the golf ball. So those are basically the options. So if you're struggling with that release, you're struggling to get that straight line release, struggling to get that compression on the ball, make sure that you've got the prerequisites first. Make sure that you're nailing those first 4 pieces of the top speed golf system. If you look at your swing on video and you are nailing all those pieces, now let's look at the straight line release and the move course. If you see that you're coming down steep, you nail in those pieces, those first 4 prerequisites, and you're coming down steep, then you may want to work on the move course, right? If you're coming down nice and shallow, then you may want to work on the straight line release course to get that sensation of that club releasing out in front more easily. And those are all things that are included with your membership. All you got to do is click the house icon at the top of the page there. That will take you to the home page. If you scroll down the home page, you'll see a list of all the courses that we offer. So you'll see stable fluid spine, you'll see the power turn, you'll see the lag course, top speed lag, compression line, straight line release, and the move. Work through those based on what you're seeing in your swing, and it will help you. And will really help you to get that release working a lot better. All right, so Mark B says, how do you determine playing speed? That's a good question. That's basically your playing speed is going to be the club head speed that you use on the course that you're most comfortable with, right? So it's a combination of the speed that you can control, right? Where you can control your face, your path. Because when you swing 100% effort, again, speed removes feel, right? So we're going to have trouble feeling, okay, is this club over the top? Is it too much from the inside? Where is the club head? Am I hitting it in the center of the face? You know, all those kinds of things that you lose the feel for those. So it's basically your happy medium between having some good speed and also being able to feel your face and your path and your strike location and those sorts of things. So basically your playing speed is just that's the speed that you're using out on the course right now. And maybe your playing speed is too fast. Maybe you don't have control of those things. And maybe it is that you have control of it, but you just don't know. It's what I would call conscious or unconscious incompetence, where you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, and you also don't know what it feels like, right? So that's unconscious incompetence. Conscious or that'd be conscious incompetence. Unconscious incompetence is where you're getting your club to be in the right position, or you don't know the right position to be in, but you're getting the clubs to be in the right position. So it's just a matter of finding the happy medium that works best for you. And as you raise that 100% effort swing, that playing speed swing is going to go up, as I mentioned earlier. So Steve H says, is it true both knees should be angled in knock kneed at setup for better stability? No. This would not be more stable. This is actually going to be less stable if you're like this. If I'm like this, I'm gonna have a hard time kind of turning. You don't need to have your knees like this or like this at setup. I would just be in a relaxed position, be in an athletic position. So if you imagine if you were a shortstop, right? If you were a shortstop, would you be like this, getting ready to go? No. Would you be like this? No. You would just be like this in a nice. You just have your knees naturally kind of go out over your toes, essentially, right? That's basically where you'd be. That's an athletic position. Imagine somebody was running at you, right? Imagine I was running at you and you couldn't move, but you just had to brace yourself for the hit. What would you do? Would you go like this? Or would you go like this? Or would you just kind of get down, try to just stick your butt down a little bit? Don't overthink it. It's just, you don't want to go like this or like that. It's just the natural bending of your knees. That's where you want to be. Wherever your knees kind of go naturally. That's when you squat down a little bit. That's all you want to be. That's not going to make you more stable to have your knees in. In fact, that's probably going to make you less stable, because you're going to have to make some sort of compensation in the backswing to get your legs to be working in the proper way. So Steve M says, hey Q, I've been trying to shallow the club and I'm having success with my irons. However, I'm having a problem with my driver. I seem to be hitting the ball first, or hitting the big ball first. Not sure what I'm doing wrong. Thanks. It's the same thing with the driver. The only difference is it's going to be a little bit flatter of a swing, so you're not going to need to shallow it out as much. It's possible you may be over shallowing it. And the other thing to consider is a driver, it's a longer club. It's a harder club to wield, so things are naturally going to be a little bit harder. So I just work your way there. Do it with the irons, get it to where you're doing with the irons, then do it with your hybrid, then do it with your fairway wood, then do it with the driver. So kind of increment your way up there and get more comfortable with each piece along the way. It's hard to say exactly what's going on without seeing your swing, but I would say one thing to consider here with your driver, it's quite a bit longer than, so I have a wedge here. You can see the difference there. So with an iron, I'm going to be right here, and with a driver, I'm going to be more like right here. So you can see my swing with the iron is going to go more up, right? It's going to be more vertical. And then with the driver, it's going to be more flat, right? Because of the length of the club. So there's probably going to be, you may be over shallowing it, or maybe feeling like you need to do more with it than what you need to do with the driver. It's hard to say without seeing your swing, but really it's the same kind of thing. I would just work your way up. All right, we got about 13 minutes or so here. If you got any more questions, go ahead and post them on here. Let's see if there were, we'll go check out the questions that were posted before, see if there were any good ones there. Yeah, see any real good questions there. So Jeff P says, you have mentioned workout resources. Who has some on website? So we have the fitness course, which is really just stretches. So if you're interested in kind of some stretches, so there's one in there. The one that I talked about was kind of open up your thoracic spine a little bit. So that's your upper spine. That's where the rotation, the separation of your hips and your thorax comes from, mostly. So if you're feeling really tight right there, you may want to go work on that. And the easiest way to do that is to click the house icon at the top of the page. That's going to take you to the home page. If you scroll down the home page, you'll find a list of all the courses. It's actually going to be toward the bottom where you'll see that. So it's I think it's something. I think it's Fitness with Joe Yoon is what it's called. There's like 5 or 6 stretches in there. So check those out if you're interested. But there's no workout. It's not a workout or anything. It's just a stretch. It's just stretches. So Keith S says, what is the best way to hit the center of the driver club face consistently? Good question. So number one, I would say, as far as technique is concerned, is I would look at your stable fluid spine. It's really the foundation for everything. So we want to make sure that we're nice and angled the way I address. We're stable up to the top of the swing. Really what you'd like to do is, if you were to, at address, draw a line right outside your trunk here, right? And so it's a line's right outside your trunk. As we go up to the top of the swing, we want to stay within those lines. We may move a little bit toward that trail line a little bit, but we want to stay within those lines and then basically in the same angle of those lines with our body, right? So if you're going like this, or if you're going like this, or if you're really, really sliding off the ball, it's going to make it really, really difficult to get that strike in the center of the face. So that would be the first thing that I'd be looking at, just as far as a technique standpoint, is your stable fluid spine. It's really the foundation for everything. And to work through work through the stable fluid spine, click the house icon at the top of the page, and then scroll down. That's going to take you to the home page. Scroll down, and you'll see the stable fluid spine course listed there under the courses. Work through level 1, level 2, level 3, ingrain all those pieces, make them second nature so that you do them automatically. Now, as far as doing some skill training, so let's say your spine angle is good. Your spine angle is perfect. You've got the technique down. It's just that your skill may not be very good with it. What I'd recommend doing is doing something that's called interleaving practice. And with this kind of practice, what you actually do is you intentionally hit shots off different parts of the face. And I know it might sound counterintuitive, but this gives you an overall better feeling of where the center of the face is. So what I recommend doing is get some foot powder spray. I actually have some right here. I wouldn't recommend getting this particular brand. This is the Walgreens brand. It worked good initially, but now it's not, I can't get anything to come out of there. So it's not working real great now. The one that we found that works really, really well is the Odor X. It's Dr. Scholl's Odor X Odor Eaters. It's a yellow can. Sprays really nice, white, evenly right on the face. So when you use that, you can kind of see I've got some on the face still here. When you use that, when you strike the ball, here I'll rub off some of it. You can see where I just rubbed off with the dot. It showed exactly where I rubbed off on there. So when you strike the face with the ball, it will do that same thing. You'll see the dimples of the ball. You'll see exactly where you striked it. So what I'd recommend doing first is I would spray that, spray the face, and then I would hit about 10 balls and just see where your tendencies are. Let's see if most of them are in the heel. Let's see if it's all over the place. It might be all over the place. Most of the time, what I find is that people will have a tendency. The strikes will be, kind of more in the heel, or the strikes will be more in the toe. They won't be kind of spread out all over the place. It'll be kind of more concentrated. The dispersion will be in an area of the face. So the first thing I would do is I would just try to adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want, right? So let's say that I'm hitting shots and I found I'd use the foot power spray and I found out most of my shots are kind of over in this area, kind of toward the toe, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to intentionally hit this ball off the heel. I'm going to try to hit it way over here. And what will likely happen is it will move that strike closer to the center of the face. Now, if it's still in the toe, that means you didn't exaggerate it enough. I would exaggerate it even more. Really, really try to get that strike in the heel. Feel like your face is staying in there much longer. Feel like you're really extending your hands out. Feel like you're more on your toes as you're coming into contact. Do whatever you need to do to get that strike to be more in the heel. And like I said, most likely that will move that strike closer to the center. Now, if you do actually get it in the heel, that's great. That means that you've made change. You did an awesome job there. Now you just have to ease off of it a little bit to get to where you want to be. So I would just ease off it on the next one. Try to get a few in the row that are right in the center of the face, right where you're trying to be. Then after that, what I would do is I would try to do this interleaving practice that I talked about. So I would divide this this face into sections. So I'd have my toe, my center, and my heel, and I would use that foot powder spray it on there, and I would intentionally try to hit it off the toe, right? And then I would go until I'm successful. So if I hit the first one, trying to hit it off the toe, I hit the first one, I hit it off the center of the face, doesn't count. I have to try again. And I would count how many attempts it takes me. So let's say it took me 4 attempts to get it in the toe the first time. Then I would move to the heel, and I'd try to get that strike in the heel. And I'd do whatever I need to do to get that in the heel. So if that's trying to feel like it's all adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So feeling like I'm lunging at the ball or whatever it is, whatever I have to do to get that ball on the heel is what I'm going to do. And I count how many attempts it takes me there. So if it took me 4 on the toe, then 4 on the heel, then I would do it for the center of the face. And it took me 3 to get it in the center of the face. That's 4, 4, and 3. That's 11. That's 11 attempts. Now I'm gonna try to beat my score. I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna try to beat my score of 11. I'm gonna try to continue to improve that. Once you get to where you're going 3, 3, 3, now what we can do is we can make this a little bit harder, right? What we can do is we can actually split the face into a tic-tac-toe board. So we can have high toe, low toe, high, middle, middle, dead center, and then low on the face in the middle of the face. And then we can have the heel where we're going low, medium, high, heel. And we can try to do it in that. So that's 9 attempts that you're trying to make, and you're trying to get 9 out of 9. Tell you what, if you're getting 9 out of 9, when you're doing that, you're going to have complete control of that club face. So what this does, and it's been scientifically proven to give you a better overall awareness and improve your ball striking. It gives you an overall better sense of where the center of the face is. I know it seems counterintuitive, but intentionally hitting the ball on the toe and the heel and in the center gives you an overall better sense of where the center of the face is. If you can feel both ends of the spectrum, it helps you feel exactly where the middle is. And you can do this with a lot of things. It's not just the center of the face. Now, what's also really cool about this is that when you get off, you know how to adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want, right? So let's say you go out someday, you're on the course, and you're hitting everything off the toe. You're trying to hit in the center of the face, but you're hitting everything off the toe. Well, you can call upon your ability to intentionally strike the ball off the heel to adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. You don't have to continue to hit the ball off the toe all day. You can easily change your feeling to get the desired result, and now you can start just smoking it right down the middle again. And then once you actually start hitting it in the heel again, when you're trying to hit in the heel, you're essentially calibrated at that point, right? Now you can go back to feeling like you're more on the toe. So golf is really a constant game of adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. This is what the best players do. So that's what I'd recommend doing to get your face control, especially with the driver in the center of the face. All right. So Don L says, when chipping, I'm having issues rotating and making consistent contact. I don't have same issues with regular iron shots. Any advice? Yes, absolutely. So what I find with people who really struggle with the rotating is that they try to use their arms too much, right? So we're trying to lock everything down and then just move our arms like this. That's going to be really, really difficult to be consistent when you're pitching. So unlock your knees. Let your knees pivot around. We can keep everything locked up like in a putting stroke if it's a really, really short shot. Like if it's a short chip like that, sure, we can do that. But if it's anything that has any amount of speed, we need to unlock things so that we can move around and rotate and be very, very consistent. Otherwise, we're just going to be chopping down into the golf ball and things like that. So that's the first thing I'd recommend doing. The second thing I'd recommend doing is already set up open, right? If we're having trouble rotating, if you think about it in an extreme stand, if I close my body, it's going to be hard for me to rotate, right, to the golf ball because I just can't rotate my body enough to make that happen. So I'm just going to end up kind of throwing my arms at it, right? Well, in chipping and pitching and things like that, typically we're not going for the most distance. So we can open up our body and sacrifice the amount of shoulder turn that we would be able to get to do that because we don't need that space to be able to do that. Typically, chips and pitches are only about this long at most, right? They're only getting maybe to here. And I can easily turn my body this much away from the golf ball when my feet are open. So what I recommend doing, if I angle this down, is already preset the hips open. Get the feet close together, which is also going to make it easier to rotate. If I'm like this, it's harder to rotate versus if I'm like this. Much, much easier for me to rotate. So I'm going to do that, and I'm also going to already preset. So if I'm hitting it straight this way, I'm going to already open up my body. So I'm going to have my toes pointed about 45 degrees in that direction. So I've already got my hips open right here. All I have to do is unlock my knees, and I can very, very easily rotate back and through. And you're going to feel like you are swinging along your right hip, almost like you're bowling, right? When I'm bowling, I'm taking this ball and I'm swinging it along my right hip. When you're pitching, it's the same kind of feeling. You want to feel like you're tossing that ball toward the target. So when you toss a ball, right, if I were to take this ball and toss it that way, I wouldn't just go like that, right? I would open up my body and toss it that way. That's the same kind of feeling that I want to have when I'm chipping and pitching. I want to set up already open, my feet about 45 degrees. I'm going to unlock my hips and my knees here, and I'm just going to let myself rotate back and through. It's going to feel like you're using a lot less arms when you're doing this because you're probably used to just going like this, right? It's going to feel like you can really move through and be a lot more consistent when you do that. So that's what I'd recommend doing. One, unlock the hips and the knees. Let those things move around and rotate. Two, set up pre-open. that's already going to help you to get through the ball a little bit better. All right. So a couple more questions here, and then we will wrap it up for today. So Joel W says, trying to drop into the slot and also turning my club grip is causing me to come over the top. Over the top when I try to bring the club more inside on backswing, I get stuck and shank the ball. Any suggestions? So the right wrist movement is probably where you're going wrong. So if you're trying to get when you come over the top, you're probably going like this, your trail wrist. I don't know if you're right-handed or not, but if you're right-handed, it's your right wrist. So we need to have that right wrist in what's called extension here, and this is bent back position. So when you're coming down or when you're going up to the top, make sure you have that, feel like you're a waiter at the top, like you're holding a tray, like a waiter at the top. That's going to allow you to keep that club coming down from the slot and coming from the inside. If you watch here I'm bent back, here I'm bent forward. If I'm like that, I'm going to come over the top. If I have it bent back, I'm going to have that club working down plane. So focus on that trail wrist, having that wrist in the bent back position. Just do some drills where without a club or anything, where you're going like this, where you're going up to the top and you're getting that pointed up to the sky, just like that. Just do some kind of feelings like that. Then what you can do is you can actually put your left hand out here like this, and you put that up to the top, and then you can come in and smack your hand. So go up to the top, palm pointing up to the sky, and then come in, have your palm pointing right there to the hand there. So that's kind of the feeling that you're going to have when you're coming in. If you are like this, and I come in, I'm going to have to go like that to get that hand in there, right? So point it up there, and then you can have that come in just like that. So I'd be doing those, and then I would add the club in there and try to get that same kind of feeling. So pointing up to the sky and then coming in like that, coming right down in the slot there. So work on that trail wrist. That's going to help you to get that in the proper position. So a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So Steve M says, thanks for the answer, Q. What do you think about shortening the driver shaft, maybe ½ inch to an inch? Really personal preference. Some people do better with shorter shafts. Some people do better with longer shafts. Average driver length on tour is about 44.5 inches. The average driver length of what they sell in a store off the shelf is about 45.5 inches. So the only way to know, and there's some players on tour that are playing 43-inch drivers as well. Clay plays a 47-inch driver. So that kind of tells you, there's all kinds of, everybody's a little bit different, so some people will play longer drivers, some people will play shorter drivers. It's interesting. I saw a study not too long ago where they talked about how people with longer arms do better with shorter drivers, and people with shorter arms do better with longer drivers. So I actually have fairly long arms. I play a 45.5-inch driver. That's what suits me very well. Clay has shorter arms than I do. Clay is about 2 inches taller than me. But when we reach up for something, we're at the same height. So I make up with it for my arm length. So Clay has a little bit shorter arms than me. He plays a longer driver. That's what suits him. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to apply to you, but that's just something interesting that you may want to think about. The only way to know what length driver works best for you is to go and get professionally fit. That's really the only way to know for sure. It'd be a tough thing to do to cut off your driver and cut an inch off your driver, and then you realize it doesn't really help you or make any difference, or maybe God forbid it actually makes you worse or something like that. You can't get that inch back, right? So you can try tipping it and bring it back, but it's still not going to be the same. So I'd recommend just going professionally fit if you want to know for sure if changing the length of your driver will make any kind of difference. So James G, last question here, says, when dropping into the slot, turn the club the same amount in the driver and other clubs. So yeah, relative to the plane, yeah, it's the same amount. But your plane's going to be flatter with a wedge or with a driver versus a wedge. So if you're talking in pure degrees, like where the club's coming down, it's going to be steeper. There's more shallowing with the wedge versus a driver. But if you're talking just an amount of from the top of the swing to that transition area, it's going to be basically the same. So, All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. We'll be back here Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Excuse me. Everybody have a great weekend, and I will talk to you soon.